Hello, everybody. It is time for Truth, Justice in the NBA for this Monday, May the 4th of 2015. Coming up, we are going to be talking about the Eastern Conference and the Atlanta Hawks. Haven't had a chance to talk about them in a few days, which was a topsy-turvy weekend for the guys from Big A. We'll talk about their performance in game number 6 to close out the Nets and how they started in game number 1 of the East Semis against the Washington Wizards. But first, a big congratulations goes out to Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, and reason he becomes the league's most valuable player, as we thought he would, but we thought the voting would be a little bit closer, and to tell you the truth, it wasn't even close. Curry garnered probably about, I would say, 83 to 85% of the first place votes. Curry, of course, was extremely consistent this season in terms of his field goal shooting, also three-point shooting. He was lethal from there. Led the league in free throw percentage this season, and was a key contributor to a team that won 67 games this past season and lost just 15. Easily the best record in the NBA. The second closest was Atlanta, who finished at 60-22. So Curry wins the MVP. James Harden, his best season by far, a distant second. Third, LeBron James back in Cleveland, and no question, feeling right at home again. He had a really good year. Russell Westbrook led the league in scoring for the Thunder, finished 4th, and the present and future of the NBA, Anthony Davis of the New Orleans Pelicans, got them to a playoff spot, finished his 5th. Chris Paul, the hero in Game 7, Saturday night against San Antonio. We'll have the Western Conference Truth, Justice in the NBA on the next show. Paul finishes 6th in the MVP voting. But congratulations to Steph Curry, the MVP of the 2014-2015 season. Now, let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets and the Atlanta Hawks Game 6, because we did not have a chance to talk about that just yet. And Game 6, Atlanta wanted to make a statement. They wanted to show people that they were the best team in the East, and they got there by red-hot shooting. Well, they accomplished that early on, and in the second half, when it was just a 6-point Atlanta lead and Brooklyn still hanging around, that's when the game changed. Atlanta went on an incredible run, 23-3. Part of that run was 15-0 after Deron Williams hit a three. Atlanta was unstoppable in the third, and this game, in some ways, although not quite as extreme, resembled that of a closeout game that Chicago had with Milwaukee a few days ago, in which it was a laugher. This one, no problem for the Hawks. They win 111-87 to finally close out a pesky Nets team. You know, Kyle Korver, when he gets it going, that allows everybody else to get going too. You know, Korver, 6 threes in the game, including 3 in the first quarter. He ended up having 20 for the game. And, you know, Paul Millsap, you know, we know that he's had a bum shoulder, but I promise you this much. The Nets had a big chip on their shoulders, and it was called Atlanta, and Millsap was a big part of it. 25 for Millsap. Great addition for this Hawks team out of Utah. And then Al Horford, he had a nice game too, over 20, despite the fact that he's got that dislocated pinky. And, you know, Demarre Carroll probably had the best series of anybody. He led Atlanta in overall scoring for this series, and he again contributed for Atlanta. In fact, the big four, Carroll, Horford, Korver, and Millsap, all combined 30 of 47 from the field. Very, very hard to be a team like that when they're playing that well. Brook Lopez, I thought, had a very productive series for the Nets. Other than maybe Game 5, he was on the money. And in this one, they got, you know, 7 rebounds from him, 19 points. For the series, he ended up with nearly 20 a game and 9 rebounds. So certainly not his fault that the Nets could not get past the first round. Joe Johnson was way too inconsistent in Game 6, 5 of 13 for just 12 points. And Bogdanovich in the game was way off, 2 of 9 for only 8 points. And Deron Williams had 13, a far cry from his Game 4 fantastic performance in which he scored close to 40 in that one, but again, only 13 in this game. And Jared Jack was the only anyone doing Jack for the Nets bench. He had 11. Their bench was ineffective. The Nets ineffective in the game with 15 turnovers. Atlanta kept the turnovers down, and the rebounding was about even, which was bad for the Nets because, excuse me, the Nets really did need to be winning the rebound battle in order to have a shot. And speaking of shooting in the game, the Hawks shot well over 50%, and the Nets were a miserable 36%. So, with Atlanta winning on Friday night, they had less than 48 hours in front of a broadcast nationwide audience to get ready for game number 1 of the East Semis, the second round, against the Washington Wizards, who had nearly a week of rest. So you think the momentum would carry over, right? Well, it did for about one half. Atlanta was blazing in quarter number 1, scoring 37 points, including a fat 20 from, again, that guy, Demarre Carroll. And at the half, Atlanta looked like they had things under control. Second half, though, it changed, and it changed big time, and it took a big 180 for Atlanta, and that was bad news. For the half, shooting 25%. And I'm going to tell you this, Washington won this game behind a great effort by the backcourt, by Bradley Beal, a career-high 28 points. And also, too, despite him spraining an ankle, and we'll find out what the status is for game 2, I'm sure, on Tuesday. And Wall performing well, too, and really, picking up the slack, 18 points and 13 assists. And Gortat doing the job in the front court, with the double-double, 12 points and 12 rebounds. But this was not even Washington's best game, okay? They didn't even come with their best effort, and they still won the ball game. The reason was because the Hawks couldn't hit anything to save their lives. A miserable 25% from the field in the second half. The Hawks took 52 shots in the second half and made only 13. Embarrassing for a team that good. Embarrassing for any NBA team, but especially for Atlanta, who prides themselves in consistency from the field, and they were flat out inconsistent, just the opposite. And so, you can look at the fact that all 5 of the Hawks were in double figures. And by the way, we got to watch for Jeff Teague's ankles. Just like Bradley Beal's ankle in the game, Teague's ankle looked like he might have had issues with it in the game. Of course, it looks like Bradley Beal's ankle injury is a little bit more severe. He had to come out in the fourth quarter despite his 28. But you can have double figures by all of your starters for the Hawks. But when they are taking way too many shots, and by the way, when their bench other than Schroeder isn't doing anything, that's a bad recipe, especially for a Wizards backcourt that simply did the job on Sunday afternoon. So, put it in perspective, 37 points for Atlanta in the first quarter, only 35 for the Hawks in the entire second half. Ouch. 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 Okay? Second quarter was okay for Atlanta, but the second half, the third and fourth quarters, that pretty much slammed the door shut. And they had good looks, okay? It wasn't like, Washington, despite playing with a smaller, quicker lineup, it's not like, Washington was there just to defend the shots. I mean, the Hawks just simply put, lacked concentration, and nobody stepped up in the second half. And for Atlanta, that's a shame because now they're down 1-0. Certainly not the end of the series, but you don't win game number 2, yeah, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, going to the Capitol for games 3 and 4. So all the pressure's on Atlanta now. Washington's playing with house money. And you could say that the Wizards feel pretty comfortable on the road. 3-0 now, away from Washington in the playoffs. And, of course, a perfect 5-0 so far. So the Wizards, maybe we're not giving them enough props, but we definitely should. And they continue to impress. That does it for this edition of Truth, Justice in the NBA. Just a reminder, game number 1 of Chicago and Cleveland will begin Monday evening on TNT. Reminder that there's no Kevin Love for the rest of the season because of the shoulder. And J.R. Smith suspended for the first 2 games of this series because he was acting like a jackass with a cheap shot in that clinching game for Cleveland against Boston. And we'll see what the health of Chicago is like. We'll see if Kirk Hinrich is going to be able to play more minutes. And we'll see if Derrick Rose can cut down on the turnovers. So game 1 from Cleveland tonight of that series. And in the West, Houston will host the Clippers. And the Clippers have to turn around in less than 48 hours after their game the other night against San Antonio. The next edition, we will be talking about the Clippers and the Spurs, that Game 7 thriller. And, of course, we'll review what happened on Sunday between the Grizzlies and the Warriors. So long for now. And, of course, we close out the show by marking out the 4th team. That's right, the Brooklyn Nets. Hey, they went farther than a lot of people thought they would, but they still got some work to do. And by the way, Teletovic is a free agent. Of course, he was lost to blood clots for the Nets back in January. We'll see if he ever plays again. And as far as other free agents, I want to wrap this up real fast. Chris Middleton, restricted free agent at the end of the year. Milwaukee's going to have to step it up because that rookie contract of 3 years ends for him. And then Brandon Bass, unrestricted free agent, nearly $7 million he made this past year. He's 28 years old. We'll see. what happens in Toronto. Quite a few free agents. Amir Johnson's probably the biggest name. $7 million a year is what he makes, and he is one of their forwards. So we'll find out what direction the Raptors are going to go right there. Landry Fields made $6 million this past year. Chuck Hayes, $5.9 million, and Tyler Hansbrough. All these are unrestricted free agents. He garnered 3.3 to Hansbrough. All 4 forwards, 3 of them are power forwards. So I can't imagine Toronto keeping all those players, not with the money that they coveted this past year. So long for now. For Truth, Justice, and the NBA, we'll see you next time.